You're that basketball player, right? The elderly taxi driver asked as Shai Gilgeous-Alexander slumped into the back seat after the worst loss of his career. It was 2 a.m., he was devastated by missing the game-winning shot, and the last thing he wanted was to be recognized by a stranger. But what 73-year-old former refugee Hassan Al-Rashid would tell him during that 20-minute ride through Oklahoma City would completely transform Shai's understanding of failure, success, and what it truly means to be grateful for the opportunities life provides. The date was May 15, 2022. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander walked out of Paycom Center into the humid Oklahoma night, feeling like the weight of an entire city's disappointment was crushing his shoulders. The Thunder had just lost Game 7 of their first-round playoff series in heartbreaking fashion, and Shai's missed three-pointer in the final seconds had ended their season and championship dreams. At 23 years old, Shai had carried enormous expectations throughout the playoffs. The media had declared him ready to lead the Thunder to their first championship since moving from Seattle. Fans had bought into the narrative that this was Oklahoma City's year to return to glory. Instead, Shai had shot 6 of 18 from the field in the decisive game, including the final miss that would replay in his mind for months. As he walked through the arena's player exit, he could hear disappointed fans discussing his performance and questioning whether he was truly capable of leading a championship team. Shai had planned to drive himself home, but he felt too emotionally devastated to trust himself behind the wheel. His hands were still shaking from the adrenaline and disappointment of the loss, and he knew he needed time to process what had happened before attempting to navigate traffic. He opened his ride-sharing app and requested a car to take him to his apartment across town. Within minutes, a worn but clean Toyota Camry pulled up to the curb. The driver was an elderly man with a kind face and gentle eyes who looked to be in his 70s. He smiled warmly as Shai got into the back seat, seemingly unaware of who his passenger was or what had just transpired in the arena behind them. "Good evening, my friend," the driver said with a slight accent that Shai couldn't immediately place. "How was your night?" Shai wasn't in the mood for conversation. "It was terrible," he replied simply, hoping that would discourage further discussion. But the driver's response surprised him. "Ah, terrible nights can be the most valuable ones if you know how to learn from them." Shai looked up from his phone, intrigued despite his emotional state. "What do you mean?" The driver glanced in his rearview mirror and smiled. "My name is Hassan Al-Rashid. I've been driving taxi in Oklahoma City for 15 years, and in those 15 years, I've picked up many people having the worst nights of their lives. I've learned that terrible nights teach us things that good nights never can." But what Hassan would share during the next 20 minutes would provide Shai with a completely new perspective on disappointment, resilience, and the true meaning of opportunity. "You're that basketball player, right?" Hassan asked as they drove through downtown Oklahoma City. "I recognize you from the newspapers. You missed the big shot tonight." Shai was surprised that Hassan knew about the game but wasn't treating him like a celebrity or offering empty sympathy. "Yeah, that was me. I let everyone down." Hassan was quiet for a moment, navigating through late-night traffic with the practiced ease of someone who had driven these streets thousands of times. "Can I tell you a story about disappointment?" Hassan asked. "It might help you understand why missing one shot doesn't define who you are." Shai nodded, finding himself genuinely curious about what this stranger might have to say. Hassan began describing his life before coming to America. He had been a successful engineer in Iraq with a comfortable home, a thriving career, and plans for a bright future with his wife and 2 young children. "I had everything I thought I needed for happiness," Hassan explained. "Good job, nice house, respect in my community. I thought I understood what success meant." But Hassan's comfortable life had been destroyed by war. His engineering firm was bombed, his neighborhood became too dangerous to live in, and his family was forced to flee Iraq with nothing but the clothes they were wearing. "We lost everything, my friend. Everything except our lives and our hope for something better." Hassan described the refugee camps, the years of uncertainty, and the challenge of starting over in a foreign country where he didn't speak the language and his engineering credentials weren't recognized. "When we first arrived in Oklahoma City, I was 58 years old. I had spent 30 years as an engineer, but here I had to start from zero. I took any job I could find, cleaning buildings, washing dishes, eventually driving taxi." However, what Hassan said next would fundamentally change how Shai thought about setbacks and opportunities. "For the first 2 years, I felt sorry for myself every day," Hassan continued as they stopped at a red light. "I thought my life was over because I couldn't be an engineer anymore. I was angry about losing my house, my status, my comfortable life." Hassan paused, looking at Shai in the rearview mirror. "But you know what changed everything for me? I realized that I was focusing on what I had lost instead of what I had gained. Shai was confused. What did you gain by losing everything? Hassan's answer would become one of the most important lessons Shai ever received. I gained the opportunity to discover who I really was when everything external was taken away. I learned that my worth as a person had nothing to do with my job title, my house, or how other people saw me. Hassan explained that driving taxi had taught him more about human nature, resilience, and genuine happiness than his engineering career ever had. As an engineer, I solved technical problems. As a taxi driver, I help people navigate the most difficult moments of their lives. I've driven people to hospitals to say goodbye to dying relatives. I've taken new parents home with their first babies. I've picked up people who lost jobs, ended relationships, received terrible news. Hassan's voice became more animated as he described the profound privilege of being present during people's most vulnerable moments. Each person who gets in my car teaches me something about courage, hope, and the human capacity to survive difficulties. That education is worth more than any engineering degree. But what Hassan shared next would help Shai understand that missing one shot was not a measure of his character or potential. My friend, let me ask you something, Hassan said as they approached Shai's apartment building. Before tonight, how many shots did you make during your basketball career? Shai thought about the thousands of successful shots he had made throughout his life, in youth leagues, high school, college, and the NBA. Thousands, probably tens of thousands, Shai replied. Hassan nodded thoughtfully. And tonight you missed one shot and you think that makes you a failure? Shai began to understand Hassan's point, but the older man wasn't finished. In my engineering career, I designed hundreds of successful projects. But the war that destroyed my life wasn't caused by anything I did wrong, it was just circumstances beyond my control. Should I judge my entire worth as a person based on external events that I couldn't prevent? Hassan pulled up to Shai's building and turned around to face him directly. Success isn't about never failing, my friend. Success is about learning something valuable from every experience, especially the difficult ones. Hassan explained that missing the shot tonight would teach Shai things about pressure, preparation, and mental toughness that making it never could have taught him. The players who become champions aren't the ones who never miss important shots. They're the ones who use their misses to become better shooters, better leaders, and better people. However, what Hassan said as Shai was getting out of the taxi would stay with him for the rest of his career. Shai, can I give you one piece of advice from an old man who has seen many kinds of success and failure? Shai paused with his hand on the door handle, waiting for Hassan's final words. Don't waste this disappointment. Use it to become grateful for all the opportunities you have that most people will never experience. Use it to understand that your real purpose isn't just to make shots, it's to inspire other people to believe that they can overcome their own difficult moments. Hassan handed Shai a small piece of paper with his phone number written on it. If you ever want to talk about basketball, life, or anything else, please call me. Sometimes the best conversations happen between people who have both experienced real disappointment. As Shai walked toward his apartment building, he felt something he hadn't expected after the devastating loss. Hope, perspective, and a new understanding of what it meant to have a platform that could influence others. But what happened during the following weeks would prove that Hassan's wisdom extended far beyond that single conversation. Shai began calling Hassan regularly, not for rides but for conversations about life, purpose, and maintaining perspective during both successes and setbacks. Hassan's insights, gained from decades of helping people navigate their most challenging moments, provided Shai with mental tools that no coach or sports psychologist had ever offered. Hassan, how do you stay positive when everything seems to go wrong? Shai asked during one of their phone conversations. Hassan's response revealed a philosophy that would transform Shai's approach to both basketball and life. My friend, I learned that happiness doesn't come from avoiding problems, it comes from finding meaning in whatever situation you're facing. Hassan described how driving taxi had taught him that every person is fighting battles that others don't see, and that small acts of kindness and encouragement can have enormous impact on people's lives. When someone gets in my car after receiving bad news, I can't change their circumstances. But I can make sure they feel heard, respected, and less alone during a difficult moment. That's purpose. Shai began applying this perspective to his role as a professional athlete, understanding that his platform gave him opportunities to encourage and inspire people who were facing their own challenges. However, what happened when Shai learned more about Hassan's family would demonstrate the depth of resilience and gratitude that the older man had developed. During one of their conversations, Hassan mentioned that his son, Ahmed, was studying engineering at the University of Oklahoma with dreams of rebuilding infrastructure in post-war Iraq. Hassan, it must make you proud that your son is pursuing the career that you had to give up, Shai observed. Hassan's response revealed an attitude towards sacrifice and legacy that profoundly influenced Shai's understanding of success. Shai, I didn't give up engineering. I gave it to my son. Everything I lost created the opportunity for him to gain something better. Hassan explained that his experience as a refugee had taught Ahmed resilience, adaptability, and compassion that would make him a better engineer than Hassan had ever been. My son understands that engineering isn't just about building structures. It's about building hope for people who have lost everything. That wisdom came from our family's difficult journey, not from textbooks. Shai realized that Hassan had reframed his entire refugee experience as an investment in his children's future rather than a personal loss. But what Hassan taught Shai about using platform and influence would transform how the young athlete approached his professional responsibilities. Shai, you have something that very few people ever receive, Hassan said during one of their conversations. You have a platform that allows you to influence how thousands of people think about overcoming challenges. Hassan described how professional athletes had the unique opportunity to demonstrate resilience, character, and perseverance in front of audiences who were facing their own difficulties. When you miss a shot and then come back stronger, you're teaching people that setbacks are temporary. When you treat opponents with respect, you're showing that competition doesn't require hatred. When you handle success with humility, you're demonstrating that achievement should make you grateful, not arrogant. Shai began approaching every game, interview, and public appearance with this sense of responsibility, understanding that his behavior was teaching lessons about character and resilience to people who needed those examples. The results were remarkable. Shai's performance improved dramatically as he stopped putting pressure on himself to be perfect and started focusing on being authentic, resilient, and grateful for the opportunity to compete at the highest level. But the most meaningful outcome of Shai's relationship with Hassan came when the Thunder organization learned about their friendship and its impact on Shai's development. Thunder management was so impressed by Hassan's influence on Shai's mental approach and leadership development that they offered him a position as a team consultant, helping players develop perspective and resilience during challenging moments. Hassan initially declined the offer, feeling that his lack of formal education in sports psychology made him unqualified for such a role. Hassan, formal education is overrated, Shai told him during their conversation about the opportunity. You have something much more valuable, life wisdom gained from helping people through their worst moments. That's exactly what athletes need when they're struggling with pressure and disappointment. Hassan eventually accepted the position, becoming the Thunder's first ever life perspective consultant, a role that other NBA teams began adopting after seeing its impact on player development and mental health. However, the most powerful validation of Hassan's approach came during Shai's MVP season the following year. Throughout his MVP campaign, Shai consistently credited Hassan's perspective on failure and opportunity as crucial factors in his improved performance and leadership. Hassan taught me that missing shots doesn't make you a failure, it makes you human, Shai explained during his MVP acceptance speech. And being human, with all the struggles and imperfections that come with it, is what allows you to connect with other people and inspire them to keep fighting through their own challenges. Shai described how Hassan's refugee experience had taught him that real strength comes from finding meaning and purpose in whatever circumstances you're facing, rather than waiting for perfect conditions to pursue excellence. This MVP award belongs to everyone who taught me that setbacks are setups for comebacks, especially Hassan Al-Rashid, who showed me that losing everything can be the beginning of gaining everything that really matters. As Hassan watched Shai's acceptance speech from the audience, surrounded by Thunder players and staff who had also benefited from his wisdom and perspective, he thought about the taxi ride that had started their friendship. What had begun as a conversation with a disappointed young athlete had evolved into a relationship that had enriched both of their lives and created positive impact throughout the Thunder organization. 2 years later, Hassan was featured in ESPN's documentary about unconventional sports mentors, titled The Taxi Driver Who Taught an MVP How to Win. During his interview for the documentary, Hassan reflected on the lessons he had learned from his relationship with Shai and other Thunder players. Success in basketball, like success in life, isn't about avoiding failure, Hassan explained. It's about learning to find meaning, purpose, and gratitude in whatever situation you're facing. When you understand that every experience, good or bad, is an opportunity to become wiser and more compassionate, you become truly unstoppable. The documentary concluded with footage of Hassan and Shai visiting refugee families in Oklahoma City, sharing their stories of resilience and helping new arrivals understand that difficult beginnings can lead to extraordinary outcomes. As Hassan watched these families begin their own journeys toward new lives in America, he realized that his conversation with a disappointed basketball player had led to opportunities he never could have imagined. The taxi driver who had changed Shai's perspective learned that sometimes the most important destinations aren't places you drive to, but relationships you build and wisdom you share along the way. And in Oklahoma City, where Refugee's wisdom had helped create an MVP and transformed an organization's approach to mental health and resilience, they understood that the most valuable journeys often begin with unexpected passengers who teach you that where you're going matters less than who you become along the way.